Vice President Mike Pence received his COVID-19 vaccine during a live TV event this morning.
Great job. Great job.
So before you guys leave today, you'll be getting a shot record proving that you received the vaccine from us today. And this vaccine is a 2-dose series, so that means you'll need to come back in 21 days for the second one.
The event was part of a push to alleviate fears over the vaccine safety. Second Lady Karen Pence and Surgeon General Jerome Adams also received their shots. However, President Trump says that he won't receive the vaccine until it's recommended by his White House medical team. So joining us now from Wilmington, Delaware is CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe, and also CBS News White House correspondent Ben Tracy is joining us as well today. So Ben, we're going to start with you. This morning we saw the Vice President receive the COVID vaccine, but earlier in the week the White House aide to President Trump said that he would not be receiving it, at least not for now. Just what kind of message then is being sent to the public? This entire pandemic, the public has received mixed messages from the White House. So what does it say when not only is the president saying that he's not getting the vaccine right now, but while his vice president was getting the vaccine, he was tweeting about a Russian scam to, whether or not the Russians had been infiltrating or hacking our systems or not. He wasn't talking at all about what the vice president was doing.
Yeah, so this is another example of a mixed message here at the White House. And it's particularly significant because the reason the vice president did that on camera this morning, that was not a photo op. That was the White House trying to instill confidence in this vaccine. You saw the monitors behind the vice president saying safe and effective. They're trying to convince people that this is something you need to do when it is your turn to take the vaccine, because we need to reach that threshold of at least about 70% herd immunity, according to the experts, so all of our lives can go back to some semblance of normal here. The president has tweeted out that he is not currently scheduled to take the vaccine, but that he would do so at the appropriate time. Of course, he is the president of the United States, so anytime that he would like to have the vaccine now, he can have it. And this isn't a matter of anybody jumping the line ahead of people who should get it, even though I think some of these politicians, elected officials, do have concerns about the optics of that. But there are real continuity of government issues here and reasons why you would take this vaccine. The White House does remind us that the president did have coronavirus, that he did get that antibody treatment. They say they believe he is still protected from the virus, but nobody really knows that for sure. So at some point, it would seem logical that the president would get the vaccine. We'll see if that happens in the next 34 days that he has left here in the White House.
Ed, yesterday, the Biden transition announced Cedric Richmond, a close advisor to the president-elect, tested positive for COVID-19. On Tuesday, Richmond attended a campaign event in Georgia with the president-elect. How concerned is Team Biden about who Richmond may have exposed? And in light of this and the vice president's public vaccination this morning, what details can you share with us about how the president-elect and the vice president-elect plan to receive the vaccine in the coming days and weeks ahead?
Sure. Well, we know that the president-elect will be vaccinated early next week. His office has announced that. That is the plan. He, like the current vice president, plans to take it in public. We will see whether he's joined by his wife or whether he's joined by his Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, but he himself will be vaccinated publicly at some point next week. As for Cedric Richmond, he is a congressman from New Orleans. That's another factor here. He's going to be taking on a role in the White House, however, once the Biden administration begins. Biden-Harris transition team put out a statement yesterday clarifying that while he did see the president-elect, he had traveled to the event in Atlanta on his own. He did not spend more than 15 minutes in the presence of the president-elect. They kept their distance. They had their masks on. So there's no concern for others around the president-elect or those that may have come into contact with Richmond briefly at that event. Also not a concern for the two candidates that he was hanging out with there that are running in that runoff on January 5th. But to Ben's point about continuity of government, notable that last night The Office of the Attending Physician on Capitol Hill told lawmakers that as part of the continuity of government planning, all of them are now invited to step forward and get vaccinated against COVID-19. And so Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi say they plan to do so. You will probably hear and see more about that in the coming days. And I suspect we'll see a lot of other lawmakers begin to post, at least on social media, that they are getting vaccinated and encourage their constituents to do so as well.
Ben, this week we heard from several states saying that their vaccine allocations were suddenly being reduced for the following, I think, month or so. And then the federal government responded and said there was kind of a breakdown in communication, which I suppose both issues would be concerning, whether there are fewer vaccines being made available or whether the federal government is not communicating well with the states. Both of them I'd like some clarity on. So can you tell us just what that's all about?
Yeah, this could be a significant issue because it's a significant number of vaccines we're talking about. The governor of Washington State, Jay Inslee, is saying that his state is going to get 40% fewer vaccines than it expected to get next week. So it's not a small number. A senior administration official is telling CBS News that months ago, states were given what they are calling potential planning numbers in terms of the numbers of vaccines they should expect to get once these vaccines were approved. And they're pushing back, saying those were just potential, and that those states were then informed earlier this week as to what the actual number will be for next week. And those numbers, the administration says, have not changed. So I think you're right. This could be both a communication issue and also an expectation issue. I think we need a couple of more days to sort this out and figure out, is there a real systemic issue here with delivery of the vaccine? Because we're also hearing from Pfizer that they have this vaccine in their warehouse ready to go, ready to roll out to these states, but it's not happening. So I think we need to figure out, is this just growing pains or is there a bigger problem here? And we should know that in the coming days.
Ed, back to you. The president-elect also announced his picks for his environmental team yesterday, including yet another historic nominee. Tell us about it.
Yeah, actually, I'd count at least two, and he's managed to make history with most of these picks so far. In this case, the big one is his pick for Interior Secretary, and she is New Mexico Congresswoman Deb Haaland. She's one of two first Native Americans elected to Congress. They were elected at the same time in 2018, and now she will be the first Native American to run the Interior Department if she's confirmed by the Senate. That's notable not only because she'd be a first, but also because the Interior Department actually has great amount of influence over Native American life, really, in the United States. They control the Bureau of Indian Affairs and about 1/5 of the country's land, including federally controlled tribal areas. So this is a major symbolic nomination, one that was pushed by Native American groups, by liberal Democrats who see her as somebody who not only would make history, but is like-minded in their beliefs about what the administration should do. We should watch, though, however, when she undergoes her confirmation hearing, the kinds of questions she'll get regarding the issue of hydraulic fracking. She supports totally banning hydraulic fracking. Remember that over the course of the campaign, the president-elect sort of changed his answer on that issue a few times and now says that he supports banning fracking on federal lands, which is something that she has also supported and so probably will be happy to enforce if that happens. The other interesting pick, Michael Regan. He is North Carolina's top environmental protection official, has been since 2007. The 44-year-old would be the first black man to lead the Environmental Protection Agency should his nomination go through. All of these announcements expected to be made official tomorrow here in Wilmington. The president-elect is not holding any public events today in observance of the 48th anniversary of the death of his first wife and his daughter in that Christmas-time car crash. Killed them 48 years ago today here in Delaware.
Ben, I want to ask you about something else that would otherwise be a massive story. It is a massive story, but because we have so many massive stories, sometimes we don't pay enough attention to some of the big issues. This week, we learned about a huge Russian-linked cybersecurity breach that's affecting companies and government agencies nationwide. In a statement, President-elect Biden said in part, quote, "I will not stand idly by in the face of cyber attacks on our nation." Meanwhile, we haven't heard anything from President Trump on this. Just explain the White House's strategy and what kind of message are they sending by not sending a message at all?
Well, this is a huge story, and the government's own cybersecurity agency has called this a grave risk. This could be one of the worst hacks in U.S. history, and you're right, we have heard nothing at all from the president. In terms of a strategy, I don't think there is one. This is just not something that the White House is putting anything out publicly on yet, and we have been asking now for days, for some sort of statement from the White House. The White House press secretary was asked about this, and she said, we're looking into it. But we have heard nothing from the president in public or on Twitter about this. The closest he got to mentioning Russia this morning, which is suspected to be behind this hack, was talking about the Russian hoax, but that was in reference to his campaign from 2016. And I was just checking my phone while Ed was talking. As we've been doing this hit, the president has tweeted several times, and all of it is about his election loss and talking about the governor of Georgia and saying Republicans need to be stronger and help him overturn this election. So the president is obviously focused on other things. He's not talking about the vaccine, and he's not talking about this suspected Russian hack.
Yeah, in addition to that, Ben and Ed, he's tweeting grievances at the New York Times. He's retweeting people who are against the wearing of masks and the recommended CDC guidelines. The president's own CDC has recommended these guidelines, and the president is retweeting people who are suggesting to do otherwise. I just wonder, Ed, if you've heard from the Biden folks at all, if they're sort of worried, or at least concerned, that what seems to be happening in the White House right now is a complete abdication of the president's responsibilities as it comes to the American people. He's certainly got a lot of grievances with governors and with people who he deems disloyal, with secretaries of states that he lost, but nothing on the coronavirus except to tout the successes of the vaccines or the stock market. And I wonder if there's sort of there's a little concern that when the keys to the government are handed over, they will be in a much worse shape than if the current president, was doing more to ensure a viable government when President-elect Biden takes office.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. The president-elect has channeled that publicly, not only in regards to the coronavirus. This week he said this cyber attack is a grave concern. He has been briefed on it. His team continues to learn more about it from the relevant agencies as the transition continues. But this is part of why they were so concerned about the delay in the beginning of the transition. Remember, it took until about 20 days into the post-election period for the administration, the current one, to open up the doors, if you will, to the new team and let them come in. And so now, as they're being read in on the vaccine distribution, which, as you can see this morning, there are some issues with, this cyber attack, which they just learned about this week, that they're now learning more about, the state of the economy, the fact that the president hasn't been involved in the ongoing and protracted bipartisan negotiations over some kind of a stimulus relief deal. Yeah, they're a bit concerned. They say that privately, they say that publicly. And it makes the job that the next president will have starting January 20th all the more challenging.
Yeah, and of course the political risk is, and we know this, all of us who cover politics and report on it, which is that the public has a short-term memory. So anything that happens after January 20th, even if the ground was set in the current administration, President-elect Biden will be blamed for those mishaps. And it will be hard for any president to say, well, it was really the fault of the last guy, although President Trump did make a habit of doing that. So what do I know? Anything's possible. We appreciate it, Ed and Ben, as always. Thank you both.